So obviously we've talked a little bit about hypercasual in the last session. Throughout the day, I think so far we've talked about a whole range of monetization options. But I always like to sort of round off with people from different perspectives. And frankly, we could not get more different perspectives than this panel, and that's mostly from my friend Chris, who is always out there fighting the good fight for premium games. So Chris, do you want to introduce yourself, what you do, and your perspective on monetization?
So my name is Christopher Kassulke. I'm the CEO and co-founder of HandyGames, now part of the THQ Group, so one of the largest PC and console publisher in Europe. And we take care about mobile, about console, about PC for smaller and mid-size developer and smaller and mid-size projects. And as you already mentioned, we went through the business for over 20 years now. And we see that currently premium is one of the hottest things in the moment where you don't have to spend 1 or 2 million in user acquisition. So you need to concentrate on a great game. And I think as a game developer myself, I would say that's a perfect timing to develop and even publish games. Because I don't believe in hyper-casual, sorry.
Yeah.
So my name's Ian Verchere. I'm from...
Have we got your mic?
Yeah, I'm Mike.
Yeah, we have.
Oh, you are. You got. Good.
Can you hear me okay? Yeah.
Sorry.
So I'm Ian. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Session Games in Vancouver. We're on our own action sports on mobile. It's a great niche for us. I share some of the views as far as hyper-casual goes, but I'm not against building those types. We just released our first Switch title, which moves, like if you move away from mobile to premium titles. We're fans of subscription models. We're fans of longer-term retention and engagement, and we find that for us in our niche, we spend no money on user acquisition. We build quality products that Apple and Google like. They feature us. We've been working with Red Bull Media House now for about 5 years, generate over 30 to almost 40 million downloads just based on organic word of mouth. And so our business model is a little bit different. We want to deliver quality experiences that brands like ski companies and bike companies and stuff all want to be a part of. So we lean closer to the long-term retention monetization approach than the hyper-casual.
So Guy, obviously you're coming from a different point of view. In case people missed your talk earlier, do you want to explain?
So hi, I'm Guy Singh. I'm not the moderator, like it says there. This man over here is. So Bango is a company that helps app developers find paying users. So we approach things slightly differently in that we target users based on their buying behavior. And we do that because we're connected up to mobile network operators across all the different continents, and essentially we process payments. And because we process payments, we understand the buying behavior, who's spending a lot, who's making small purchases, how regularly are they doing it, what type of content are they buying. And so we try and direct users to in-app purchases. I don't really have a view on hyper-casual or premium games. My perspective is slightly different because obviously I know very little about the ad monetization. It's more about monetization through payments that we're the experts at.
Cool. Kim.
I'm Kim. I work for MoPub. MoPub is an ad monetization platform that is optimized to maximize the revenue that mobile publishers make out of their ad inventory. My role at MoPub is in the client services team, so I work with a variety of publishers. A lot of them are in the gaming industry. Nowadays, a lot of them are in the hyper-casual scene.
Jules.
Hi, my name is Jules Minvielle. I'm a Chief Strategy Officer and co-founder at Ogury, a technology company specialized in mobile journey marketing. We leverage data to help brands and publishers to better execute their strategy, which can be better monetize their apps or drive user engagement. We have several products for publishers. One is a consent manager that allows the publishers to better deal with the GDPR compliancy. Another one is a full monetization technology, a revenue optimization technology. And we also have our own demand, brand demand, that we run into any kind of games. So we work with hyper-casual, casual, mid-core games, as well as news apps, entertainment apps, or utility apps.
So let's start looking at the premium end, obviously, Chris being here, how does the fact that you're a premium game affect the way you think about how you generate revenue? I mean, does it affect the way you design, the way you promote? Because is it just you fire and forget? Do you not care anymore once you've got the money in the door? I mean, how does it? I mean, I know that's not the case, but you know what I'm doing. You know what I'm doing. So tell me how that affects the way you work.
So normally developing a game is a long-term business. It's still, even if you have a paid title, you know how we think. So a game, yes, you have a gold master somewhere, but normally you're doing now DLCs, for example, on the PC side. You're doing regular updates even on consoles or on the Switch, and you still do that on the mobile space as well. There are perhaps games like, for example, PC or IPs that coming to mobile, but they are total one experience. You cannot do just updates. So like, for example, This Is the Police, short before Christmas period. It's a pure premium business thing. What we have to take care of is always like not killing one specific market. Like, for example, when you're releasing a game on PC, you need to watch out if you're releasing the same game on mobile that you're not simultaneously release it, because there are some kind of maximum price points exactly on mobile. Like a premium game with $9.99 is already very high on Google Play or iTunes. So if you have a PC game that costs 39 pounds, for example, that's heavy to say, okay, now you get the same game experience on mobile, but it's cheaper. So it's a little bit more tricky.
You've also got the long-term aspect of it in terms of like sales and pricing and discounting and all this kind of stuff. Is that an issue?
It's not a sprint. It's really like currently we distribute titles that were developed even 20 years ago on PC. We still make money with that. Our back catalog is very strong. And our mother company, THQ, is perfect in that. So they really distribute titles and IPs that are there for a really long time. They acquired just Carmageddon, for example, an IP that is really old. And of course, we will do something with that as well. So having an IP that is really strong, bringing that back to life, getting that out there again is perfect. And of course, you have a different kind of view on the games and also on production. You cannot just make a premium game to free-to-play or hyper-casual game. That's not working. So you really develop a game from scratch. How many of you really play games in the audience?
All your hands should be up.
How many of you really like advertisement in such games? Who really watch the advertisement, not just because they get money? Wow. So normally a lot of developers out there, they develop a game because they believe it's good. They only implement advertisement because it makes some money. We were starting with advertisement in games in 2006 already, in mobile games. And I can tell you it was a big market those days. It was a big market in 2010. Nowadays, advertisement is not exactly what it should be. So normally
on that bombshell, we should let Ian have a chat now. So I was thinking we'll get to the ad side of it, but I think it'd be interesting to see your point of view, Ian, because obviously you don't just do premium stuff; you do a wider variety, I think.
Yeah.
So how's that different for you?
So we've just gone through an experience where we took Snowboarding, the fourth phase, which had 8 million downloads on iOS and Android. We got Google Editor's Choice. This is a great game. Did really well for us. We thought this because we built it in landscape mode, we felt like it belonged on the Switch. And so we just went through the process of actually taking out all the things that annoy people about free-to-play mobile games and going back to what does it mean to make a premium experience? And it was really, really instructive for us because when we first got into mobile, everyone's, oh, you're just a bunch of XEA console guys. You don't understand mobile. We've been in the mobile space for a while now. Like, well, you don't understand console. We're like, well, hang on, actually we do. So we've gone back to removing some of the more rapacious monetization things. And so when you take out loot boxes, you take out, that stuff. What is it you're doing? And so we went back to a more sort of premium experience where the career mode, the multiplayer mode, you start thinking in terms of what the feature set is as opposed to what the metagame might look like, or the core compulsion loops that drive people to, and I would argue, pay to reduce the frustration of progression through the game.
It's interesting.
That's a controversial statement.
Yeah, no, I mean, I have a different view on it because I think that a lot of the monetization models that we use for hypercasual for maybe longer term mobile games can actually be beneficial in. It's just making sure that you target that monetization of that. So I'm going to think more about the monetization before we talk about kind of all the ad-funded side with you guys at the end there. So Guy, in terms of your view on listening to this, it sounds to me like the space where you guys sit, you're trying to sort of maximize their ability to be able to turn those interested people to make that purchase, whether it's for premium or whether it's for mobile kind of in-app, to make sure that scales. Is that right? I mean,
yeah, sure. I mean, to a certain extent, I'm kind of completely agnostic, unbiased towards whether people where app developers make their money from in-app ads or in-app purchases. What our company's core focus is to have a look at what the buying behavior is. And by buying behavior, the types of things I'm thinking about is that how frequently does someone make a purchase, and what's their average purchase of that? Is it a relatively high one? Is it $5 or above, or is it sort of like relatively low? And actually, app developers can use this is to sort of say, well, I'm looking for, I don't know, a subscription-based service. So if I'm looking for a subscription-based service user, what I want to see in a user, or a typical profile of a user, is going to be someone who is making frequent purchases over a period of time. Whereas if I'm a hyper-casual game user, and basically it's a tap away, I just start using it, and it's almost sort of like a very blasé relationship I have with the game. Is that the money that needs to be made sort of like in the first 48 hours almost. And so either that's through bombarding them through ads, which then affects the user experience, or it's by providing them with an offer that is attractive. So a hyper-casual user might actually be someone you want to look at in terms of buying behavior as they make small purchases. I'm just looking for small purchase users.
Yeah.
So it might not be the top spender you're looking for. You're looking for someone who, looks like their habit is they buy something for 50 cents or 99 cents, and so you would look at that. And so you're looking at the behavior completely different from a demographic, which is sort of, I'm building a profile of a user, male, over 25, comes from this region, is employed, et cetera, et cetera.
it sounds very much like the pattern of behavior we saw back in the ancient days when dinosaurs roamed and mobile operators like me were running things, where we saw there was this amazing value from a group of audiences who had a small budget, and they would spend that budget every month. We had to direct them to spend it to the right thing.
So, another, just a quick one on that. Another example is that, like, in places like Southeast Asia, some parts of Latin America, where there's hardly any credit card usage, people want to do little micropayments onto the credit that they've got on their phone.
Yeah.
And so you've got to target it based on that kind of thing.
That makes sense. So let's swing the other side of the fence. So obviously we just heard Vincent and Celine talking about hyper-casual. From you guys' point of view, obviously ads aren't something you bombard people with. They're things that we actually get great value from. Do you want to talk a little bit about the kind of experiences that you guys have in terms of where you find the value in games through ads?
Yeah, sure. I think, well, right now we're working with a lot of hyper-casual games that are being very successful. And I think the ones that are doing better are the ones that are able to find the right combination between the formats they serve, their frequency, without affecting too much the user experience.
Yeah.
So of course, they're much more reliant on ads, so they'll be a lot more aggressive than mid-core, hardcore. However, there's still a way to try to find a sweet spot. And as MoPub, the control to the publisher to be able to be completely flexible on how they want to set their strategy in their ad monetization.
And I think the key thing for me in that space is, like you say, this understanding the friction and where, particularly why I like opt-in so much. I mean, I'm biased, I spent 4 years working at Unity or talking about it, but the reason why I like that process of opt-in is because the friction is diminished. It takes place in the moments of relief, not in the moments of frustration. or if it's designed well. So how much of an influence is the design, do you think, on getting that great experience?
I think most of the hyper-casual games that are being successful, they take that into consideration when designing the apps. So they try to find a way to add the apps try to add the ads into the app in a way that doesn't affect the user experience as much. Or, for example, they will sometimes use rewarded video as a way to increase the length of the session, but that is something that in many cases the user is happy to go through, because they will be able to play for longer.
That makes sense. So you, from your guys' point of view, you're looking at the analysis of not just the player behavior inside games, but also how that compares between different games in the market. So other kind of views about the comparisons going on here?
Yeah, we made a research on the uninstall rate and when the uninstall happens between hyper-casual, casual games and mid-core games. And it's true that actually the uninstall rate after the first week is much higher in hyper-casual than in other games. So the hyper-casual games audience is much more volatile. We know that, but I mean it's proved by data. What it means is then that you can have different strategies when you know that as a game publisher, and if you are a hyper-casual game publisher, because we do work with some of them, like Voodoo, for example, where we run campaigns for our brands, partners, and actually you know that the users are not going to stay as long as in another game, so you can display more ads to them, including interstitials that are sometimes a bit perceived as more intrusive. And then the consequence can be that actually they will leave sooner. So actually it's the prophecy happens because actually you bombard them a bit more because you know that they are not going to stay anyway. But in the meantime, the hyper-casual gamers are probably not going to pay for these kind of games anyway. So the value exchange is much more clearer in these kind of games where you play very quickly, you play a lot, and then after a couple of days or weeks or months, you move to another game. So the value exchange is quite clear, where you see ads in exchange for playing these kind of games for free, because anyway, probably you would not pay for these kind of games, which is different for mid-core games, for sure, where people are much more engaged, and the percentage of gamers that are highly engaged in the games are, of course, much higher in mid-core games than in hyper-casual games. So you need to adapt the monetization strategy based on this, on the data that you have on your users, and the behavior that they have. So you decide if you want to display interstitials based on that, if you want to have more rewarded videos, maybe, and how you want to play the IAP strategy against ad monetization strategy.
Oh, no, to me, this is really interesting, because when I'm looking at a client's game, I'm often looking at a whole bunch of things in terms of where the balance is. You kind of hinted, I think, on an area I think is really important, which is the different types, the different genres, the different kind of methods of play, the expectations of the audience. It's almost, to my mind, that there's a cohort of players who are interested in the hyper-casual, short-term stimulation, and they're a natural fit for ads. There are other audiences who want to get engaged in the gameplay and want to be lost in that gameplay for a period of time and uninterrupted by that, and maybe they're less good for maybe ad monetization in some circumstances. So, I mean, do you have a view on that? Do you see any data like that coming out of your analysis?
For sure. I mean, that's why we really insist on the fact that the monetization strategy needs to be different based on the data that you have on the users. And you have some gamers that are going to play on an hyper-casual because they only play hyper-casual games, but you have some of them that will maybe just have one hyper-casual game on their phone, and actually will have plenty of mid-core games. And you need to adapt, because the perception of the advertising for those users is not the same for the two different categories of users. So clearly, I mean, the mobile, that's why we provide all the publishers with the entire mobile journey on what happens outside of their games, because you can think that a user is the same because two users are the same because they behave the same in your app, but actually outside of your app, they may be two very different users. Your monetization strategy based on that as well.
It makes sense. So Kim, I mean, are you seeing the same kind of reflection? Is there a distinction in terms of the kinds of games that work well with the kind of services you guys offer? Or is it not just that? Is it something different? I mean, one example might be the mode of use of the device, so tablet versus phone, or it might be some other thing. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree with Guy. I think with Jules, the type of game will dictate your monetization strategy. In the case of Hypercasual, where the user normally makes the most revenue for the publisher in the first few days, and it's so easy to start playing. It needs to be set before going to App Store or before you start your user acquisition campaign. Whereas for mid-core games, for example, you're focusing more on the user who will spend longer time and just engage more with your app. So it's completely different.
The hyper-casual gamers are also very attractive for the brands because the age and gender, as we saw this morning, is very different, and you've got more female and more older people in hyper-casual games than you have in mid-core or hardcore games, which is also appealing for the brands, of course, who wants to engage with this kind of ABC category. So sometimes that's why also, because we are talking about hyper-casual and how volatile, but it's also a very appealing audience for some of the brands we work with, because that's a type of gamer, the type of profile that you don't see in other kind of games. And that's how you can also attract brands into games. And that's also, I think, a good thing for the whole industry, that some users are coming to mobile gaming through the hyper-casual. They start to play on games, and maybe after, step by step, they are going to play more mid-core games and hardcore games. And I'm really convinced that this transition is happening and will happen in the future. Like the new players that just came with hyper-casual will become real heavy.
Guy, is that something you see at all in terms of, do you get to see a kind of picture over time with different territories, how the adoption is changing?
We haven't done any analysis on sort of hyper-casual versus sort of mid or higher end games, and I think it does make sense that theory about sort of. I mean, there are some basic facts which are that regardless of whether it's hyper casual or what type of game, the majority of money for with exceptions that is right. The majority of money is made from in-app advertising, and so therefore like people have a high percentage of those users. And they've got a small to actually make purchases. And the people who make purchases, you have to look at what their characteristics are like. So obviously they have to have money, they have to have credit to be able to make the purchase. But in addition to that, they need to be bought into the game. They need to have a longer term relationship. It seems like the difference between a hyper-casual gamer and someone who's sort of like long-term retention, making subscriptions or making purchases within there. It's a bit like sort of like someone who has a casual fling and someone who's in a long-term relationship.
Yeah, it's that gym membership thing. I'm going to go. I'm going to play because I've paid in already. So I kind of get that. Ian, from your point of view, I mean, is the reflection of the sort of more hyper-casual kind of view of life work with you as well, or are you seeing this kind of certain games work really well in certain monetization models and others are very different?
Yeah, obviously the native platform should dictate, and mobile has different expectations than PlayStation 4 or PC, right? So you do have to look at that as kind of the parent sort of filter when you're looking at this sort of stuff. I mean, for us though, and I was listening to what you were saying, it makes a lot of sense. We look at the issue, for us we talk about brand safety or sort of the curatorial aspects of advertising. The reason why for us action sports works so well is because it's a very attractive demographic to a lot of brands. But and working with Red Bull and whatnot, that's a very interesting group of people for a lot of brands. And so we work very closely on deeply integrating advertisers in our game. But it makes sense for us because specialized bikes, head skis, like these adds to the reality of the experience, right? Yeah. So I could spend days making up fake ski brands, and I mean there was an early version of a game I did for EA where we actually we had to make up fake ads for the first version of SSX.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Well, we didn't know, right? And then next thing you know, we're asking Oakley, and they say, well, you can put our brand in your game for $20,000. We're like, that's wrong, right? So now it's switched around the other way. So for us to work with endemic brands that feel native and stuff, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And it gives the gamers a feeling of realism. So I want to talk, the value proposition of having advertisers in the game, I think is related not only to the platform, but also to the content.
But I think
right?
also the market.
Like, do you want to see, Oscar, do you want to see a Starbucks on Normandy when you're storming the beach in a World War II game? You don't.
Well, I might want a coffee.
Well, I know, but it doesn't make sense, right? And so brand safety, the curatorial rigor, and making context sense is a super important part of it.
And it absolutely is. And I think it's only really recently that we've got to the stage where we've started seeing brands taking that seriously and actually putting effort into it, which is a good thing. I remember back in the day there was a group called Massive, which got bought by Microsoft, I think. Went no, but it was because the timing was wrong. You've been around long enough to know, when timing works or not. But back to this point about, is it just that you don't want to make games which have ads in it, or is it more
We
that
still
they
have
don't make
games
value?
that have ads in there.
Yeah.
But when you check out which ads are shown, I think if you play games that are free to play and you see the ads, what ads are you seeing?
More free-to-play ads.
For other games?
99%, if not more, just other games.
Yep.
Yeah.
So why should I tell my consumer go to another game? I don't get it. It's perhaps good for Hypercasual because they are losing it anyway. So they are bombarding those consumers with ads. But normally, if you're talking about retention, talking about a long-term IP, it's my game. Why should I send my gamer away to another game, to another company that pays me a small share at the end of the day? It's just not working for us. If it would be like we started in 2006, the first advertisers were insurance companies, car companies, whatever. As you said, if I have a car game and I see whatever, Volkswagen, Audi, Porsche, whatever, it would make sense. Nowadays, I see just other games, and normally the same advertising. And even if I flag that out, I have no fill rates at the end of the day. So normally, as a game developer, I'm thinking about, I want to keep my gamer into the game. And as mentioned, if I'm seeing the same game advertisement again and again, it's annoying. The problem is really, at the end of the day, that advertisers from the other audiences are not coming in. And for a game where I invest really millions into a game, I don't want to see the gamer go away. If I have hyper-casual games, I need to invest a lot of money into user acquisition. Our user acquisition for free-to-play games are very similar to yours. 0. Because I don't need that. I have good games. I want to have the player long time in my game, and they will spend money in the game. And with premium games, because a lot of guys, a lot of players are really fed up with advertisement or free-to-play, because they are used that on the other platforms. Free-to-play are not that huge on other platforms. It's coming there, thanks to World of Tanks and all the other stuff, or Fortnite.
Well, Steam makes most of its money on free-to-play.
Yes, fine. But a lot of guys still, for example, our group is still making a lot of money with box retail version. There's still a huge market out there, and for us, this market is very easy to calculate. A free-to-play game for 3 years ago, I can calculate that. Now at games, I cannot calculate free-to-play games. It's a bet. Good luck with that.
So it's interesting because I obviously I have a bias towards the ad side, but my experience of using them is that it's how I find the next game. But it doesn't stop me playing the game I'm currently playing. In fact, particularly with rewarded ads, what I find is I want to play the game more. Because I watch an ad, I am enabled, I'm empowered to play the game more.
Strange guy.
And therefore, I get more out of the game. I mean, but am I strange? I mean, from the data you see, do you see that churn?
I have to say that I really agree with the fact that most of the ads are for competitors, direct competitors, and we see a clear impact on the churn. And that's why we are here to explain the brands that it's safe to spend on games and that actually the gamers are not just teenagers and that you've got more and different demographics, and that's how we can manage to bring more exclusive brand demand into games because it drives higher revenue, but also because it it has a positive impact on the retention rate of the users, because that's, I think, one of the only industries where you advertise for your direct competitors all day long. No one else would do that. Okay, if you think about the dating apps, they don't advertise for their direct competitors. They don't do it. They just don't do it. So why all the games are advertising for their direct competitors? Because today that's the biggest spenders, and that's true that if you want to run only brand ads, you don't have 100% fill rate yet, but that's why we need to convince all the brands to come into games more and more and to spend more.
That's your job, not mine.
That's my job, and that's what we do.
I can't stand staring at a little fish for 30 seconds, asking me to drag it into its aquarium so I can get currency. It's just like 30 seconds, and then I realized that amount of time, that temporal apportioning, is a direct reflection of the length of a television ad, and actually has nothing to do with games at all. It's a completely arbitrary thing. And so I think what's exciting for me is to see what do ads look like that are native to games and not adapted from old school media like television, right?
That's an interesting one.
30 seconds, like
we
why?
did actually test this at Unity back in the day. Well, when it was Amplifier, before we were bought by Unity. We actually found 20 seconds was the sweet spot back then, not 30. And actually, 20-second ads was more effective.
Yeah.
But it wasn't sufficiently more effective because of the cost of creation and then using those ads on other platforms turned out to be, I think that's why you end up with, like you say, with the TV
right,
thing.
but as I was saying about brand safety and whatnot, the other side of it is the affinity that you build for that. I don't want to play that game because you've wasted 30 seconds of my time. So the value proposition of the currency or the reward, whatever I get from that effort, does not equate. I can't make that connection. But when I see a 7-second ad or a 15-second ad or something, I'm fine with that.
No,
I think it's the same thing with when you check out YouTube, for example, or the early days of websites. So a lot of companies had websites with some ads on there. Nowadays, they are not getting any money. That's the same thing on games nowadays. When we started implementing advertisement into our games, we received a lot of eCPM. When I compare it to nowadays, it's the same thing on YouTube. If you are talking to YouTubers, what they earned in the beginning and what they are earning now, and that's advertisement. And that's exactly the problem that you're not getting in new big brands outside of games.
So let's let the ad tell us, what do you see? I mean, my experience is different from what's been described here. My experience is that watching an in-game ad has been beneficial and doesn't cannibalize. That's what all the data told us. Is it the same what you're saying?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think data has shown that, a lot of people will get annoyed by certain ads, but a lot of people will not. A lot of people will be keen to trade that for the free experience. And that's why cross-promotion works really well on hypercasual games, for example.
But in terms of the kind of the space itself, I mean, do we think the ad network is growing in value proposition, or as Chris saying, is it diminishing?
The perception, I mean, I really agree again with the fact that seeing always the same ad, I mean, the ad fatigue, if we can say, is really important in games.
Oh, yes.
I mean, you keep seeing the same ad. I don't know how the performance ad networks are doing it, but the cappings are not always very efficient, let's say. So you can see like 20 times the same ad in a day. And I think that we need to take that into account as well, because clearly, I think the impact on the retention, again, is very, very important. So seeing a brand is different. So just the fact that the ad is different from what you see the rest of the day is clearly much more interesting for the gamer than just seeing always.
So we're just about to hit lunch. So I'm going to just ask you one quick question. What's the one tip that you would give the audience to maximize their monetization for their game? Go on, Chris.
Concentrate on value for the consumer. Yeah. And that's the key. Think about who is really paying at the end of the day for your game, and that's the consumer. That's not an advertisement agency. If it's free to play, if it's premium, think about the platform and think differently. So a PC game can have a different monetization model than, for example, a console game, and even mobile. And there are also markets beside that. Like, for example, there is a market beside Google Play, but that's a premium market. free-to-play market is totally different.
Yeah.
So depending on that, concentrate on a great game and then you make money. But really build a game that is for hyper-casual with advertisement. Think about it before. What value do you want to bring to the consumer? How long do you want to keep the consumer inside your game? Or if you want to get rid about him.
Ian.
I can't add anything to that except for the fact that you have to make a good game, whether it's hyper-casual or hardcore. If you don't have a good game, why does anyone stick around and play it? It doesn't make any sense to me, so.
Guy.
Value.
Yeah, I mean, I think nothing beats content and user experience. And you know, if you concentrate on a great user experience, prepared to put up with ads, the user is prepared to put up with a certain amount. Obviously, once you cross the threshold and it becomes annoying, then you lose the user, and then you've lost any kind of monetization, whether it's ads or purchases.
Kim.
Because I'm on the platform side, my recommendation would be for publishers to develop strong relationships with their ad partners. We have a lot to share because we're seeing a lot of integrations, a lot of them working well and some of them not so well. So yeah, taking recommendation on best practices will be really helpful.
Cool. Jules.
And my takeaway would be to really focus on the data to better understand your users and how they behave in your app, of course, but also outside of your app, so you really understand them and you can adapt your monetization strategy. And of course, to do that, implement a consent management platform to make sure that you do that in a GDPR compliant way.
Smooth. Like it. On that note, I'm going to thank you very much.